Hello and welcome to the 177th episode of the Board Game Barrage podcast. My name is Mark, I'm the Red Tank, and I'm joined as always by Neelan the Orange Tank.
Hello.
And Kellen the Red Tank.
Hello, hello.
On today's episode, there should be NFL music playing in the background if I'm doing my editing job correctly. I'm playing that music because we are doing the first ever BGB draft. We are drafting 5 games each from the top 100 games as rated by BoardGameGeek today, June 8th, 2021. I know games move in and out of the top 100, but as of today, we are going to go through the list and in draft style, pick our top games to form sort of a collection. These are not going to be our favorite games. These are not necessarily going to be the best games we think, but this is just going to be a collection of games from the top 100 as rated on BGG. And then we are going to have you all vote on which collection you think is the best. And so we're going to blend the American system of a draft with the European soccer system because, you know, I insisted on having a soccer scoring method somehow in here. So the winner of each week is going to get 3 points because you get 3 points for a win in soccer. Second place is going to get 1 point, and third place is going to get nothing. But going back to the American system, whoever finishes in last gets first pick for the next draft we do. Got that? Nice and easy rule set. We will get more into the draft later, but first we're going to be talking about the games we've played. Neelan's going to start us off with his play of Azul Summer Pavilion. I'll follow that up with Roads and Boats, and Kellen will round us out with his play of Ruthless and Death May Die, a doubleheader from Kellen. So Neelan, tell us about Azul Summer Pavilion.
I mentioned in the upfront, I was surprised that we hadn't spoken about this. I've actually been playing this for a few weeks now with my partner and her roommate. So they're both big fans of Azul Original. And then I said, hey, there's this other version that I haven't tried, and let's give that a go. We've now played several games of it. I'm also surprised that this didn't come up in our Easy Breezy Summer Games discussion. It's like literally right there in the name. But Azul Summer Pavilion is Azul 3. Or at the very least, the third iteration of the Azul franchise. So there was OG Azul, there was Azul Stained Glass of Sintra, and now Summer Pavilion. And a few things have changed in the Azul universe. So firstly, no more squares. So Azul and Azul Sintra both had these square tiles that you were placing in the grid. Summer Pavilion sort of does away with that entirely. You're now placing rhombuses. Ooh.
It's the exact same game, but Azul 3 is just rhombuses instead of squares.
Exactly. No, if only that was the only change, that would be great. But no, it's pretty substantial.
Wow, you spoiled the review.
One of the first things you'll notice is that if you look at the board, it's pretty substantially different. You have 6 stars of like 6 of these, I'm just going to say diamonds from here on out. 6 diamonds making up 6 different colored stars, and there's 1 star in the middle. And the main way that you draft tiles still stays mostly the same. This is kind of what I consider the core of Azul. You have, your factories, and every round of the game, you're going to pull 4 tiles from a bag and place them randomly in these factories. And when you take a tile, you take all the tiles of that color, and then the rest get pushed to the middle. You keep going until every tile is being picked, either from the middle or from one of the factories around the ring, and then you are placing them onto your scoring board. All of the placement happens at the end in Summer Pavilion, unlike Azul, where you're kind of just placing them as you go. So you are starting by drafting all the tiles, and then you decide how you want to use them later. The way that you are placing these on your grid is every star is made up of 6 diamonds, numbered 1 through 6. And if you want to place a diamond onto spot number 5, you have to have 5 of that color. You pay 4 of them to the bank, and then you put 1 onto that spot. So the spots are more expensive to play on depending on the number of them. You're going to score primarily by placing diamonds adjacent to each other, so say building them out from one number outwards. But then also there's an abundance of end of game points. Every star that you completed is worth a variable number of points depending on its color. There's also a central star that has to be one of each of the colors. There is going to be scoring if you've covered all of the 1s on your board, all of the 2s, all of the 3s, and all of the 4s. And then on top of that, there's also this bonus collection that happens where in the middle of all of these tiles on your board, there are these little icons, whether they're windows or pillars or statues. And when you surround all of those icons with tiles, you're going to get to pick another tile from this sort of central board. So there's a little bit of competition over that board. You might see a color that you know is like a contested color for the round, and you take it before someone else does by quickly trying to assemble your tiles around a specific icon. The thing that kind of clinches all of this, and I believe is an unusual change for Azul, I've not played Sintra, but there are wilds now in Summer Pavilion. So every round, the wild color changes. So as you can imagine, that makes the competition over those colors that much more feisty. So if you see a wild on that central board, you're going to want to try place your tiles to get an icon to pick up one of those tiles from that central board before someone else does. And that's kind of the gist of the game. One of the things that's most fundamental in how this has changed, which I think changes the way it feels quite a bit, is the draft phase feels a lot less ruthless than original Azul. One of the things I really like about the original Azul is this kind of feel that as the round is drawing to its close, someone's going to be left holding the bag and just have to put like 6 tiles that they can't use onto their board, and then half of them are like negative points. Summer Pavilion kind of feels like you're just drawing less tiles or are more able to utilize large numbers of tiles in a way that feels like that takes a little bit of the bite out of that. Everyone kind of mostly feels pretty happy with the result at the end. There's not that much tension over the draft. And I kind of feel like the puzzle of the game becomes a lot more focused on the order that you're doing things and placing things on your board. The game is still heightened by the competition over specific colors, but you can end up in situations where you're really angling to fill one color of star, and then that color just doesn't come up frequently in the last couple of rounds. And that kind of blows because that can be a big hit to your points. So it feels a little bit like the tension is coming from almost a push your luck game that you're playing with yourself rather than other players. And I think overall, I would say that is my biggest disappointment with Summer Pavilion. I've enjoyed the change of the game in terms of like keeping the core mechanic but having it feel slightly different. But I just feel like something got lost along the way in the transition between these two games in particular, where for how simple and beautiful Azul is, there is still sort of some tension in between the players where you're drafting based heavily on what other players are picking. I feel that gets neutered a little bit in Summer Pavilion. So it's been an interesting change, and I think it's an interesting thing to see what they can do with this franchise if they continue to vary it up in these ways. But this one feels to me like a strict downgrade on the original Azul. Mark, I know you've played this maybe once or twice. Do you remember what your impressions were of it?
Yeah, I played this once, and I don't really remember it too well. I do remember feeling like this version of Azul struck me as sort of like a generic abstract game, whereas like the original Azul is also an abstract game, but it felt like fresh, it felt interesting, you know, it felt bitey and aggressive if you wanted it to be. This just felt more like a generic abstract game. I remember it being pleasant enough, but you know, I remember playing Azul the first time and being really into it and really excited to play it again. And even Sintra, I liked Sintra even more than this one, I think. Sintra had some interesting mechanisms that seemed novel for an abstract game. This felt like more of a standard down the road, generic sort of like get your pieces, put them in where they need to be sort of thing.
I think that's right, and I think that that's partly because they offload so much of the puzzle to basically be onto your player board. So it feels a little bit like that's where the game is like the abstract, getting your pile tiles in the right order, in the right places on your board is more of the focus than what are other people doing and what do I need to draft successfully. So I would agree with that take, absolutely. This does make me more excited to try Sintra, which I believe is still your favorite, Callan, like of the two you've played.
That is right. And I have it, and we should play it.
Yeah, I wouldn't try it.
But you can see who Summer Pavilion is for, right? It's sort of like I played Azul and I got hurt.
Totally.
And so now I have Summer Pavilion so I can touch the rhombuses instead of those mean, nasty squares.
I also don't hate that trajectory of like, okay, there are times in Azul where you get left with 10 tiles and that sucks, and sometimes there's very little you can do about it. But this feels like an overcorrection to me. So I think there's a happier middle ground somewhere that's probably closer to the Azul side for me personally. But
Azul 4.
Yes, hopefully in Azul 4. Yes, once we get to... Ooh, well, we could get like... I know. I was going to say 5-sided shapes, but we'll save that for Azul 5. That is Azul Summer Pavilion.
Kellen, you like Azul Sintra more than standard Azul?
I really enjoyed Sintra. It's a little hard, right? One of the things that happens is the more experienced you are as a board gamer, the more out of touch you get with what light and simple and breezy is. And, I remember I was just talking to someone this weekend about Agricola and how when I first got that game out, I was like, this is rocket science. No one will ever play this with me.
Right.
And I spent hours reading the rules, and this is back when it came out. And now I wouldn't even really classify that as like heavyweight. It would be somewhere in the mid-weight to maybe light-heavy if you wanted to go there. Sure. And so something like Sintra is definitely like more complicated than it needs to be, but that overcrank works for me as a hardcore gamer.
Sure.
Do I think it's better than Azul? No, and I bought the base Azul for it's like such a good wedding gift. Because people, even if they're like a board game, but then they look at it like, wow, this is beautiful, and even if they never play it, they're like, wow, that was a pretty gift. Honestly.
Sure. No, I agree.
And I would not buy Sintra for people, but I may personally prefer playing it. It's like that one extra crank for the gamer.
Yeah, I totally get it. I played Sintra way after it was released, and one of the reasons was I thought I remembered hearing a lot of bad press about it. And then after playing it, I thought it was a solid game, so interesting. So I got a chance to finally play a game that I've wanted to play for a long time, the Splotter...
Boats and Roads.
Boats and Roads, that's right. But no, this is Splotter's Roads and Boats. I got a chance to play the 20th Anniversary Edition, which I think is just the base game plus the expansion, but we played it without the expansion. Roads and Boats is known as, and I think this is an apt nickname for it, Logistics, the board game. In Roads and Boats, you are presented with a randomly created map. There are some maps suggested in the manual, but it's a map that consists of things that you've seen in a lot of board games. You've got your mountain tiles, and you've got your pasture tiles, and you've got rivers, and you've got seas, and so you create this map. And then what you're doing is sort of like a civilization game is one way to classify it. You are trying to build up your civilization. You're trying to convert one kind of resources to other kind of resources in order to get points. You get points from creating money or stocks. This is very tongue-in-cheek in the way that a lot of Splotter games are. Your points at the end are going to be consisting of how much money you've created, how many stock certificates you've created, and then how much you have contributed to this shared wonder where you're all building up this wonder wall. For you Oasis fans out there, there's this wall that you're all building up, and whoever builds the most of the wall sort of gets the most points.
You're just getting so many songs stuck in my brain.
That's right.
Up until this point, I've had Faith Hill's seminal song, Waiting All Day for a Sunday Night, in my head, thanks to the draft that we're doing.
I am not familiar with that song.
Yes, you are. They play it every Sunday Night Football. I've been waiting all day for a Sunday night. The tough get rough. A primetime fight.
My football watching has been mainly of the soccer variety football, but I'll have to catch the next one. Anyhow, so the way you're trying to do this in Roads and Boats is, as I said, with resource conversion, which is a standard sort of board game thing, but it's done, again, in a weird, splottery way. So what this is all about is building roads for the first half of the title. Boats are coming later, don't worry. But so you're building these roads to ferry the goods from sort of your home base to the tiles that can produce what you need to produce. So, for example, you want to get to the mountains to make a mine, to get the gold and the ore, to make the money, to make the coinage. So you need gold to make money. So in order to get to the mine, you have to take your donkeys, which is the method of transportation you start with, to carry the goods to the mountains, and then you make the mine there. And then once the mine starts producing things, you have to ferry the gold with your donkeys to another part of the board where you're making your mint, where the money gets produced, and then you take the money from your mint. You have to find a way, maybe by now you've created trucks or you've created wagons to take the money from the mint to the stock exchange, where you combine the money with paper to make stocks. So it's again that money plus paper equals stock is, again, feels like a splottery sort of joke sort of thing. I mean, the most weird splottery thing in this whole game is that the way that you create research breakthroughs to get advanced units in the game is you have to combine 2 geese with 1 piece of paper, and that equals research. I don't understand why that is. That's the most weird combination in the game, but it's there.
You've never heard of the paper goose scientific method?
Yeah, that's right.
You're saying that you take a donkey
right
to the mine,
right,
where you mine money,
yeah,
and then you
Mine
ride
gold.
that donkey back on the boat or road that you made to the stock exchange,
Right.
and then you add paper
to the
and
money.
make stocks.
Yes, exactly.
That's this game,
Stocks equals paper plus money. Yes. That's right.
but that you get from the mine,
Right, exactly. Exactly.
and you transport on a donkey.
Right. Well, a donkey
the
if you're
stock.
starting out, but you might be able to get yourself up to a truck or a wagon.
Ooh, goody.
Or you can go the boat angle, and then you can go with, rafts or rowboats or steamers. And so, this game is all about transportation. It's all about logistics, all about figuring out how to get things from one place to another. And so you have these two sort of main supply methods. You have the boats, which use like the fixed rivers and seas. So that's like a thing that's like based on the map. You know throughout the entire game where the boats are, where the boats can go, where the seas are, where the rivers are. And then you've got this like variable method of transportation, which is the roads. So you can use some of your resources to create roads, which makes it easier to transport. The only thing that can go off-road in this game are the donkeys. They're the only thing that can travel off-roads. So if you want to create trucks and wagons and all these things to move a lot of goods, you have to create roads. But again, those roads are variable. The game starts with no roads and you have to actually build them. The other very interesting thing about this game is that nothing is owned by anybody. The only thing that you control is these methods of transportation. You own the donkeys, you own the trucks when you make them, you own the boats when you make them. Everything else is fair game. So you might have a mine that produces gold and iron, but if your opponent goes there and grabs it, they get it. It's theirs now. You can have like a stock exchange. These stocks that are produced are one of the most valuable things in the game. It's where you can get a lot of points. But if your opponent gets there and can control the turn order so that they get the stock as it's produced, they'll get it. And these things that convert resources, these stock exchanges, these mints, these stone factories, these paper mills, they produce as long as the goods are there. They don't produce when you want to produce. If the goods are there, they will produce. So that's a very interesting sort of thing where the ownership is very minimal in this game.
Does that remind you of like Fast Loss in some weird abstract
absolutely.
way?
Yeah,
where you're
absolutely.
using everything that's sort of just been plopped out on the map?
100%. The way that Fast Loss, like the infrastructure is shared, and you can manipulate the infrastructure, but it's not yours. Like the ants or whatever in Fast Loss are not yours, but you can manipulate them. So there's an interesting combination here where there is a solitaire aspect to the game, and there's also this interactive aspect. Obviously, there's an interactivity insofar as nothing is your own and somebody can come by and take it. I think in practice, that doesn't happen a lot. I think it strikes me that there would be an inclination in this game to get your own infrastructure going. I think relying on being able to like leech off your opponent, at least in the beginning, it would be really hard to do because to even get to your opponent is going to be difficult in the early game. You can also build these walls that can prevent people from getting to your things with roads, but those walls can be destroyed. It takes some resources to do that, and they're often easily traversed because, like, if there's a road blocking one side of a hex, you can just go around a lot of times, but it can take you some resources. However, I will say that once your opponent can breach those protections that you built, like in my game, I was so worried about trying to understand the game and trying to get my infrastructure going, and my opponent, Marnie, who is a moderator on our Discord, she got her engine going quicker. She got trucks going and wagons going. She got her like automotive side going quicker. And before I could even set up protections, she was coming into my side of the map and bringing her empty wagon and just taking all the gold my mine was producing and just taking it to the other side of the board, clear across the board to her mint, where she was just producing coins. And like by the time I got a chance to look up and look at her side of the board, she had produced all this money while my, mine had been completely stripped by her wagon. So it's sort of interesting where you can build your own infrastructure, you can look down and do your own thing, but you have to be wary of an attack by your opponent because they can be devastating. And that goes to the whole splatter thing where, I was the one who was hit by this in my game of Rows and Boats, and there was no catching up. There's no catch-up mechanism. Like, if you get hammered, you've got to figure out some way. Hopefully you're, like, doing something your opponent's not doing, and therefore it'll be your chance to get back into it. This is both of our first games, so I think in a subsequent game you'd realize that was a potential issue. But if you fall behind this game, I can see that like a lot of other splatter games, there's not going to be much way to catch up. But that said, even though that this was like a little under 2.5 hour game for us, and a game where I knew about an hour and a half into it, maybe an hour into it, that I was done, Usually that would be a complete turnoff to me, usually because, the competitive aspect is big to me. I found myself enjoying this game just because of how weird it was, just because of, like, how fresh it felt. It's, like, unlike any game that I've played. Fast Loss, there's some of it there, but this is, like, Fast Loss on steroids. It's comparable, but it's a much different thing. I will say that for people averse to, like, little bits and little, like, fiddliness, this game has, like, literally probably 200, 300 little bits. It ends up being in practice not that big of a deal because there's not much setup. There's not a lot of bits you have to set out at the beginning of the game. So what we did was we just started with like a pile of the bits in the box and we just picked them out as we needed to, and it was fine. But there is a lot of that going on. Just one last thing is that for all the things going on here, it's hard to sort of like grok it because of how weird it is. But I found myself, once we sort of played a couple rounds of it, the rule set is relatively, especially for how much is going on, relatively streamlined. We've got a lot of weird stuff going on, but it is a more stripped down rule set than you might think looking at it, for sure, I would say.
What do you have to say about how ugly this looks, Mark?
A diplomatic question from Neelan.
Right. I mean, look, it's a splatter game. You know going in that it's a couple of guys that are producing this in the garage in the Netherlands or wherever.
Yeah, no, it is funny because I have this complaint about a lot of the splatter games, but like I think Food Chain Magnate and the Great Zimbabwe have its defenders, and I think that aesthetic kind of appeals to some. But like I look at Roads and Boats, and I'm like, this is like on the far end of the splatter spectrum, as it were, in terms of aesthetic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Food Chain Magnate has a lot of people who like the art style.
Totally. It has a look.
Roads and Boats has a look. If my 5-year-old daughter brought me this cover as something she had drawn, I would say, wow, you drew a really good donkey.
Right. Yeah.
And the rest of it, you'll get better at in the future.
If you're a fan of clip art, you're going to love this game. Yeah, no, if you're going into it for the aesthetic, then you're probably not going to have a good time. But if you just like logistics, good lord, you have to play this game. Like, this is crazy into the logistics.
If you hate art and love logistics, this game is for you.
You could not play a game that's more in line with your taste if those are the two things, your two criteria. So that is Roads and Boats by Splotter. Kellen, tell us about Ruthless.
Yeah, Christina and I had a chance to check out Ruthless, Legends of the Black Flag. This is a game that is a 2 to 4 player deck building game. So this comes to us from Roland McDonald, who we actually talked about last week, the illustrator of Rune Nation. And here he is the artist and the designer. This is a review copy, and currently right now the expansion for Ruthless is available online, and we'll put a link to that. I believe they're running a crowdfunding campaign that is not Kickstarter, but this is Ruthless Tall Tales. And unfortunately I didn't get Ruthless Tall Tales in time to play it for this episode, but Christina really enjoyed this, and I have a feeling we'll play with the expansion and check that out. But Ruthless is a deck builder that is definitely built off of some of the core tenets of Dominion and Ascension style games, where you are building a deck. You start the game with some money in your deck, you start the game with some abilities in your deck. You draw 5 cards at the beginning of your turn. You're buying from a row of 5 cards. When you buy a card gets replaced. And that all sounds really similar to things you've done before, but what's different about here is that each turn, you take a turn, each round of the game is one hand of cards. And you play a card, and then your opponents play a card, back and forth. And so you are playing cards and buying cards all at once. And each round you are trying to build the best boat of pirates. And you're trying to build the best boat of pirates that sort of uses a poker hand system, where if you have a straight or a flush or 3 in a row of the same suit, and there's sort of an escalating amount that each pirate will bring you. And so what that means is you're actually evaluating cards from a variety of different aspects. It's like, do I want that pirate in my deck for its ability, or do I need it right now so that I can win this combat? Because at the end of each round, one player is going to get a bunch of victory points, and one player is going to get some victory points based on how strong of a hand they've put together. And what's interesting about this is a lot of times when a game has you check in on scoring, it's like a game is divided into 3 phases, and at the end of each third you score, and someone gets the most and someone gets the second most. It's pretty typical that the same person will get the most each time. And, if they're winning, they're going to keep winning. But what Ruthless does that's kind of weird is that because it's a deck builder and you're not going to cycle your deck that many times, you may not get those cards back. And so in one combat round, and I don't know that it's called a combat round, you've got like the best combo in the game. You've got 25 points to win that one, and then all of those are in your discard pile, and your next 5 cards, you got jack. And that's cool. That's different. Another way that it breaks away from the deck building mold is that the ability to just put new cards into your deck that buy money is not as easy as it is in a game like Dominion. Your Dominion gets criticized for the big money strategy by people who don't know how to play Dominion, but nevertheless, it is a strategy in Dominion. Here in Ruthless, when you want to get treasure, you actually are doing a little bit of a press your luck game where you get a random treasure from a deck, and you can either take a bigger benefit right then and get money, but it doesn't go into your deck, or discard it into your deck for a better effect that you're going to get to use multiple times. And that's really the main way that you get new treasures into your deck, which is pretty interesting. Tying that much press your luck into the system may not appeal to everybody. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I thought it was a fun little mechanic, and you use 2 of the cards that you start the game with. You discard them to go plunder treasure, and that's when you draw from that deck, and you have to decide whether you're going to keep it. The art here is gorgeous, really, really pretty. We've posted a picture of this on Twitter this past week. Christina and I really had a game where the feistiness came out. The feistiness really came out, where she was like, you didn't tell me that. And I was like, well, no, I did. Right up until the end. And if you've played a game with Christina and she's going to beat you, it was that feeling that we had in a more traditionally reserved for an area control game, but we were definitely feeling that way near the end of this game. Really quite good. I think that Christina has a lot less experience with deck builders than I do, so a lot of the ideas in it didn't immediately make me go, oh, that's so novel or that's so interesting. It's like, no, here's a core of Dominion plus Ascension, but, we're going to do it this way. And the way that it did it is fun and interesting. And I do think the best thing it does is when you're buying a pirate from the row, you get to use its ability right then in the round. So you're not limited by just the 5 cards you've bought, and so you're having to evaluate, okay, I can put this in my deck, it's going to help in the future, but I really need its ability right now, but actually I need to build the pirate hand, so I have to buy the 5. That's going to make me the most for this round. I was very excited by Ruthless, eager to see what's in Tall Tales, which I believe is some modular expansions to sort of flesh out some of the systems. Mark, I know you maybe have played this?
I have played it, yeah, and I did find it an interesting take on deck building. For all the reasons that you mentioned, I like the choices when it comes to the currency, whether or not you're going to burn it immediately or hope it comes up a couple times, and the inter-round battles were sort of an interesting take on it. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it.
Mark, did you play it at more than 2 players?
I played it at 3.
And you liked it at 3?
Yeah.
Because like the way that Kellen was describing it made me feel like it's especially strong as a 2-player game, but I'm immediately curious. Because I feel like a lot of conflict deck builders seem to work best at 2. I wonder once you get up to the 4-player count.
Yeah, I actually was reading a little bit, and I think most people prefer it at 3 and 4.
Okay, well, that's great. That's great to hear.
I think the 2-player game, in each of those fights, once you get into the main set of bouts, it's 6 victory points and 3. And I think when you get to 4-player, there's a little bit more scaling there, so people who invest are still getting something. And I do believe there is a small way to sort of target a player where you can do an attack action on one of the pirate cards, and that is either discard a card from your hand or discard one of the dollars that you have. And kind of having some targeting ability there is pretty interesting. I think the designer, reached out to me like, hey, this has more interaction than a deck builder normally does. Yes, that is true. And that's cool. I'm excited to play it. I have no real love of pirates. I kind of squint when people go, it's a pirate game, and I say, great. You made a pirate game, and notwithstanding, but I still enjoyed it quite a bit. Eager to play it more, and I'd be happy to bust this out, and we should, Neil.
Yeah.
I think you would enjoy it.
Sounds fun.
To see what it's doing, for sure. Definitely well under an hour. That is Ruthless, Legends of the Black Flag, and if that is interesting to you, we'll put a link where you can get it and the expansion, which I know nothing about beyond that Monique of Before You Play has a video on it if you'd like to check that out on her channel. A previous guest of the podcast, the Lavender Tank, who's now much more famous than we will ever be. I wanted to do just a quick hit on Cthulhu Death May Die. I had a chance to play this. I know Mark has covered it previously on the podcast. This is a co-op Eric Lang Cthulhu game, which I couldn't be more bored by Cthulhu. Let's get started with that. And yet, I had a great time playing Cthulhu Death May Die. It really boils down we're all fighting this evil monster together, but your actions are super basic, strips out everything. Feels to me like a reduction even of Mansions of Madness, which had me rolling my eyes as to being too complicated. What's cool is there's various scenarios, right? And then you just jam them half and half with a great old one, and that deck becomes sort of the deck of things that are happening. And so, we picked a new adventure for this group that they had never done, and then used a great old one, Haster, instead of normally they've been using Cthulhu. And then boom, those mixed together are sort of providing the challenge for the game. We got whomped. We got destroyed. I was playing a nun character who was surprisingly good at combat. So I was getting thrust into all the combat situations. There was a funny negative effect I had, which was codependence, where if I didn't end up back in a space with a friend during certain checks, I was losing points. And I was forcing people to come with me because I was codependent on them. Really just a charming, cute little game. I think you could have a great time playing this with non-gamers and sort of trying to get them into something. I think the positive upside to this for me was that I didn't have to do any of the GMing, right? I had someone else set up the map, run the deck. I'm just sort of hanging out, having a good time. And as I'm going insane and getting closer to losing the game, I'm getting more and more abilities to roll dice. And I'm just like, hell yeah, let's do this. And I was not the reason we lost the game. My grandma, priestess, nun was kicking ass in this game. That's what was happening. And no one can rewrite that history. I was killing everything. And that is Cthulhu Death May Die. Mark, I know you've enjoyed this one as well.
Yeah, I think a stripped-down version of Mansions of Madness is a great way to encapsulate the game. If you like Mansions of Madness, I think you'll most likely enjoy Death May Die even more, probably, just because I think it takes the essence and cuts out a lot of the bookkeeping things that sort of slow things down. Mansions of Madness has that app, which I think is a great integration, but I just liked how stripped down Death May Die was.
Yeah, I had the thought that my brother, who doesn't really like board games but likes video games and hates competitive experiences, I was like, oh, I could get this, and I think I could have him play it around Christmas, and he would really just get into it and enjoy it. It does annoy me how much of the content is Kickstarter exclusive.
Right.
So if you're that completionist type person, I would not look into this game.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's do this. We are going to do the first ever BGB draft. Again, this is going to be a draft of the top 100 games on BoardGameGeek. Also, for those unfamiliar with the draft, the way it's going to work is, if you've played many board games, you'll be familiar with a snake draft. So this is going to be a snake draft where the way it's going to work is, say Nealon has the first pick, and I think Nealon should probably have the first pick since he's least familiar with American
the least
drafts.
sporting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the least
The
sporting.
most out of shape.
I don't know anything about sports.
So Nealon will have the first pick, Kellen will have the second pick, I'll have the third pick, and then in the next round, I'll have the first pick of that round. So it'll go Nealon, Kellen, Mark, Kellen, Nealon. Nealon will start the third round. So that's how we're going to go. Again, not the best games, not our favorite games, but just sort of a collection we would build of the top 100 games, and you'll be able to vote for your favorite list at boardgamebarrage.com/draft, and we will be picking one person at random from those who have voted. So it's not necessarily you have to vote for the winning list, and you don't have to vote for my list, which you probably will be inclined to do. But just if you vote, no matter who you vote for, we're going to be picking one person at random, and they will be getting a $50 gift certificate to an online board game retailer. So there's even more incentive to vote for your favorite list.
Can I get the $50?
No, all friends and family of Board Game Barrage and their subsidiaries and partners are not permitted to participate.
I think we're long past friends, Mark.
All right, Nealon, kick us off. You have the first pick of the first ever draft.
I'm so scared.
He's going to take Trevor Lawrence.
Don't be dumb.
Yeah, I'm going to pick
Tim Tebow.
God, I need to think about this for 10 seconds.
All I'm saying, Nealon, is that if you don't take Feast for Odin early, it may not be there.
It may not be there anymore.
Yeah, when you come back.
Yeah, I'm not so sure.
And the answer is obviously Mage Knight.
Here we go.
You have four picks between this one and the next, Nealon. So
Yeah, all your good games.
Yeah,
are
this
gonna be
is
gone.
actually it is a really scary position to be in, but I think this is the right one, knowing that there are two Mark picks in between. My number one pick is going to be Brass Birmingham.
Oh my god, you've hurt me. Oh, that would have been my first pick, I think.
Whew, that feels better then. So to talk through this, Brass Birmingham is a game that I've played now maybe like 2 or 3 times, and those experiences, going from like a first experience that was less than amazing just because of circumstance and environment, to 2 incredible games of it. I went and immediately bought the collector's edition of this. I am so excited about this game. It's a heavy economic game, but it's the one that feels like the most right to me. Like, I've spoken about Pipeline in the past and like the prospect of something like an 18xx, but something about Brass Birmingham is like tickling like everything I like about economic games, while also being just like really interactive in a way that I'm excited to play with, like Kellen, for example, where I think that there's so much shared infrastructure that comes into play, where you're like utilizing other people's placements to steal their coal, to take their iron, to take their beer before they do and use it for themselves, because what you're just trying to do is incentivize people to use your infrastructure. I think it's a cool concept that also just looks beautiful in the new Roxley edition.
I'm not convinced, Neelan, that this was right for a first pick. I think you got bad value out of this. I think there's enough games in the top 100 that are in this realm that you've made a huge mistake. You drafted a quarterback.
That would be my argument, that there are games that maybe feel like this way, but I won't lie, that if this was available for my first pick, I would have taken it.
Really? At number 1?
I would have, yeah. I would have.
Wow. I have it crossed out on my list, literally. I started building like a picture chart because when I do NFL drafts, I like print out everything and I'm like marking it off with Sharpies. And unfortunately, I had a very bad day today and did not have time to do all my research.
I'm very scared about the things that I know are probably not going to make it back to me, but cross that bridge when future Neelan comes to it.
All right, Kellen, you're up.
All right, this is not even a question. Gloomhaven, number 1. There's just no way around this. There is no way around picking Gloomhaven.
What?
In terms of value for a collection, right, okay, there's a couple things. 1, this is the number 1 ranked game on BoardGameGeek, the most popular board game on BoardGameGeek, okay? The premier number 1, boom, okay, easy enough reason to pick it. 2, we've got thousands of hours. Well, I hope, because I've only played 1 round. But presumably there are hundreds. There's 80 solid missions in here, right? 80 plus solid missions of content. This is a heavyweight cooperative game. There is one other heavier co-op game. And so the question is, which of the 2 of you idiots is going to pick Spirit Island and when? Because that's playing in the same space. And if one of you dummies picks Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion, are you serious? I've got Peyton Manning, and you've got weird little brother of Peyton Manning. No one's ever gonna pick your list.
Weird little brother, 2-time Super Bowl champion winning little brother.
We can't have too many sports references in here, Mark.
Well, you're the one who started it. I would have done it, but I had to defend Eli's honor.
All of my sports references are very Broncos-centered is the issue. Like, you can kind of trace it all back. But Gloomhaven fits so many niches. I can't say that word. Niches of what you'd want in a rounded-out collection. And I think the value of, this, we're not evaluating by cost, right? We're not evaluating by space or weight. And all of these categories, Gloomhaven may fail. But when we are evaluating by just picking a collection, man, Neelan picking Brass Birmingham.
All right. Well, I got to say, first of all, this feels like a pandering to the audience vote, but also, I feel like you just upped the stakes by making that pick. Like, I feel like you just made things serious, so I'm excited now. I did not expect you to go Gloomhaven first, but I get it. You got to go for it. So I think I might have to pivot here. I get 2 picks in a row.
Audible.
I think for my first pick, I'm going to go off book, and I'm going to go with Spirit Island.
No!
I'm going to take Spirit Island.
I knew that was probably not making it back to me.
I'm taking that.
Oh, no.
Heavy co-op, plenty of replay value. I'm not a big fan of co-op games, but this is one that I've played a couple times and I've enjoyed. And I think the run on co-op games. Kellen just started it, and I've got to hop in while I can. Pandemic Legacy is there, but I think Pandemic Legacy is cooling in the minds of a lot of people. So I just got to take the hot one.
It's also just got limited long-term playability. Yes. So that was kind of what was lowering it down on my list. I think I am potentially ruined in the co-op department here.
I feel like the way that modern gamers play board games, how many times do you have to play Spirit Island? Like, does it have 40 plays in it?
As cooperative replayability goes, it's like way, way up there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think so. All right. So now it's back for the first pick of the second round to me. I might go back to my list here and take the game that I have in second place. So, yeah, I think I will. I'm going to take PAX Premier Second Edition. It's the game I had second on my list to Brass Birmingham, and it just ticks so many boxes to me. It's got an interesting set of mechanisms. It's unlike a lot of other games. It's historically rich, which I absolutely love. Beautiful production. So, yeah, it just ticks a lot of boxes. And the game I would have picked second anyway. So I guess I didn't have to pick it before Spirit Island, come to think of it. But Kellen sort of freaked me out. So PAX Premier Second Edition is my second pick. Kellen.
There's got to be like a clock, right? Isn't that what happens here? Where you get on or off the clock. I am waffling between a few picks, and the hard thing, right, is that if we could tell you what I'm thinking, it would be fascinating. The listeners would love that. But the problem is that I don't want to say what I'm thinking because then you idiots are going to take notes, and then we're going to have a problem. Okay, I feel... Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, I feel good. With my second pick of the inaugural Board Game Barrage draft, I will select another game that I love. This is position number 14, Scythe, by Stonemaier Games. Scythe is the absolutely quintessential, perfect game to convert your friends who like video games or who say, you know what? I want to play a board game. I've always wanted to. It is casual enough. It is flexible enough. And it appeals both to the players who are like, oh my God, there are combat mechs in this game, all the way to the people who say, don't get near me, nuh-uh. I prefer Azul 3, Summer Pavilion. Scythe is gorgeous. It is one of the best Kickstarters that has ever been made in the board game world. The collector's edition is insanity. The art is stunning. The components are fun. People like setting this up. You could convince non-board gamers to try this just by looking at it, just by setting it out. I think that Neelan and I both work in video games, and if you wanted to, if there was a board game night at a video game company, you would set up Scythe, and you would get people just dying to come over and try it. You could go straight to it. Scythe is a fantastic game. It is super accessible. And my second game in my collection here to win the vote, rock the vote, get out and vote for Kellen's collection.
Kellen going Scythe.
Yeah.
This is totally unexpected. All right, Neelan, you're up. Got 2 picks here.
Okay, so I have 2 picks in a row now.
Yep.
Boo.
And I think this is not making it back to me. And in the interest of getting a solid area control, troops in the map game on my list, I have to go for a game that I'm excited to play a lot more of and is a very popular fan favorite, Root.
Damn it.
Yeah, you had to take that. That's good.
I didn't think that was going to make it back around. It's funny because this list already has a handful of some of my favorite area control games on it. Rising Sun being one that I kind of played out. Blood Rage, one of them, like, I know people love it, but I'm a little bit cool in it. But Root I like a lot, and people like it, so I think it's going to be a loved pick and a contentious pick. So that is my second pick. And then I think I just have to do this because this is the eternal party game, and I think any collection is incomplete without it. Codenames is my number 3.
I like both these picks. I think Root might have been the game I would have picked if it made it back around to me. Just, a lot of variability, a lot of interesting factions. It's got the coin system, which I'm a big fan of. And Codenames is the biggest modern classic, the biggest, newest classic. It's the quintessential modern party game. So I think 2 really, really good picks. All right, Kellen. So this is the midpoint of the draft.
I am looking. I am thinking. So I get 1 pick now, and then I'm never going to get 2 picks in a row? Is that how we're doing
this? No, you're never
this?
going to get 2 picks in a row.
Because of the snaking thing?
Yeah.
Is that a cheat? I got snaked? I'm the Slytherin here. I should be getting as many snake picks as I want. All right, my third pick that I will pick for the voice of the people. You must give the people what they want. What is my list missing but a quintessential Euro game? I will lean on the proverbial weight of shut up and sit down to make this pick. I will select Concordia, a smooth-playing, amazing Euro game from designer Matt Gertz. This game is so smooth once you're playing. You're getting cards that you're using for their abilities and for their scoring conditions. Concordia is a game that defies our love for it. You know, we recently did a listener top 20 games of all time list, and Concordia is missing from all of our top 50s, if I recall correctly, and it is the number one fan favorite of the Board Game Barrage podcast. And if I can just sort of list some of the things that you idiots drafted before Concordia, Brass Birmingham and Codenames over Concordia.
Gloomhaven, Scythe, and Concordia, the classic Kellen trio.
The most definitive games that Kellen won't stop talking about.
I come to win, and if you want to win, you pick Concordia, and you pick Concordia with the third slot. That is value. That is a value pick in the third round. Concordia, a really great, fantastic Euro game. If you want to dip your feet into that water, it is not point salad. It is not following a lot of the design trends that we dislike. And in fact, I think that its absence in our top 50s has more to do with the amount of times that we have played it, more so than the quality of the game. Concordia and its expansion, Concordia Salsa.
Oh my god, I just feel like the stakes have been so upped as we were going down this draft. Find myself doing a lot of pivoting here. Boy. Okay, well, I've got the co-op game. I've got the heavy historic game with PAX Pamir. Gonna go a little lighter here. Gonna go with family friendly. Gonna go with a game that's won a couple of awards. Gonna go Wingspan. Wingspan, a game that you could introduce to family, a game that is beautiful. The game that took the board gaming world by storm a couple years ago. I think it rounds out my collection so far pretty well. So I've got Spirit Island, PAX Pamir, and Wingspan. And so the first pick of the fourth round. Okay, I'm going to go back to my list. I'm going to go with a classic. And I'm going to go with El Grande. I'm doing it. I'm sticking to my guns here. So I'm going with the area control game here. El Grande, classic. Got a lot of expansions if you want them, but you do not need them because El Grande is a fantastic game, just vanilla. So yes, my first pick of the fourth round, my fourth pick overall, El Grande. Back to you, Kellen.
I think that El Grande is a bad pick, and I will tell you why.
Okay.
Now, it is interesting, right, because basically every pick that you guys make has been a bad pick.
Right.
As a GM of a team, of Team Red Tank, I would obviously feel that. Obviously, I would feel that way. But in this case, I feel like the winds of change are afoot in a game like El Grande, and drafting a game from 1995 in a draft in 2021 was a mistake.
See, that's your problem, Kellen. You think that the drop-back quarterback is gone. You're going to pick the guy who runs around.
I'll tell you what I think, Mark. I think about winning.
Okay.
That's all I think about.
So what's the winning pick?
Okay, here's the thing. I have a pick for fourth that I really desperately need, but you guys are not going to get to it. You're not going to be able to parse the games that are left for this. So I need a moment to get to my fourth pick because I've already got the fifth pick locked in. So think about what that could be while I figure out what my fourth pick here is. The problem is you need a complementary set of games, right? And so what I've got here, I've got to round out, I've got to flesh out what I have here. I can't go too far, right?
Well, I mean, so far I feel like you're going with your favorite game, so I feel like Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea is probably...
Yeah, that's true, if that was in the top 100. Yeah. You dummy. I'm really struggling here. All right, the fourth game that I am picking is the 7th ranked board game on BoardGameGeek, Gaia Project. Now, here we're hitting multiple things that this collection needs, right? This needs a heavier weight Euro game, okay? Now, to be clear, I have not played Gaia Project, but I have played Terra Mystica. And Terra Mystica is also a great heavy Euro game, but a couple reasons why it's not being picked here. It is ranked 16th on BoardGameGeek compared to Gaia Project ranked 7th. So just for starters, right, that's a smart pick. Pick 7 instead of 16. In addition to that, I'm looking at the genres. I'm looking at Gloomhaven. I'm looking at Scythe and Concordia. Where does this list need to go? It needs to go to space. And Gaia Project is taking my list to space with the 4th pick. If you have not played Terra Mystica or Gaia Project, this is a Euro adaptation of a little bit of sort of expanding out, researching, upgrading your little society. You are doing a puzzle on your board to impact the main board, but each faction has a unique puzzle and a unique way that they're interacting with the game board. So this gives you variety, this gives you Euro efficiency. There is a lot to like about this system, and it definitely is swinging on the heavier side. Most people will either choose Gaia Project or Terra Mystica, but for my list here, I needed to go to space, which is why I've selected Gaia Project.
All right, Neelan, close out the 4th round. You got your last 2 picks coming up.
Yeah,
here.
so it's just me 2 in a row, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I am going to be picking my 4th and my 5th, which gives me a fair amount of play here. I think that the only way to one-up Kellen is to...
Split the community?
Yeah.
Terra Mystica Gaia Project?
I was going to say, no. Oh, to go Terra Mystica? That's good too. I actually think there's kind of like a weird resurgence of that. I think Terra Mystica might be the better pick for you there for what it's worth. But
Ooh,
I'm not going to do
talk.
that. I'm not going to be that guy.
You know nothing about sports.
I do like the space pick. I think that we need a big, epic space game here. And I think that I'm so torn because I think that if this was me picking the game that I want to play, it's Eclipse. But in the appeal to a greater authority, I have to
the ratings.
Yes, exactly. To rate solely ratings, I have to go with Twilight Imperium 4th edition. And I think this is actually not even purely just like a selfish pick. Like Twilight Imperium is a game I played once and liked. Didn't love. I liked Eclipse a lot more in my first play, but I'm very intrigued by Twilight Imperium. It's such an event game. It's such an ambitious thing. It feels so much bigger in like its possibility space in terms of kind of like the negotiation and the race and the dynamics in interplay between all the different factions, that I'm intrigued to play a lot more of this. And I know it is a much loved game. So Twilight Imperium 4th edition is my 4th pick. And my 5th pick, I do think I need a cooperative game to round out my collection here. It's hard to know what the right one of the options here is, but I'm kind of just going to go with a little bit of a personal / gut pick here and say Arkham Horror, the card game, which is a game that is in my collection in shrink that I've been itching to play for years at this point, has so much content for it, has a huge amount of replayability just through the virtue of how much content there is for it. And I know is very...
You're doing this again?
Doing what again?
You're picking it and every expansion that's ever come out for it that would cost someone like thousands
you just
of dollars.
get it all,
Kellen,
right?
you're the first person who crossed the expansion thing with your salsa.
Yeah. No one said
I wasn't
salsa.
including
Opened
salsa.
it.
I
Look,
wanted to
the
say
point-
salsa to you.
The point is, if you get Arkham Horror, the card game, you have the possibility of this whole space before you if you're willing to spend $1 billion.
Thousands.
But no, yeah, Arkham Horror is, I think, just an interesting pick in terms of, like, it's a storytelling cooperative game that has a deck construction component to it and a lot of expansibility. It is also much loved in our community, so I think this will go over well among my constituents. That is my number 5 pick, Arkham Horror, the card game.
All right, Kellen.
I think Mansions of Madness
Might have been a better pick.
Second
Yeah,
edition
I
might
was
have been.
torn between that as well.
I think when you play the Neelan card that it's that game and a million games, you may just win. So I will reveal one of my secrets of how I've been doing this draft just to help you guys now that we're rounding out the end.
It's not your favorite games.
I've been looking at how many ratings a game has as a separate thing to just its rank to determine the value. And Neelan, your critique of my Gaia Project pick did have me looking at the relative rankings of Terra Mystica and Gaia Project, and I was like, oh, there's over double the amount of rankings on Terra Mystica. So we should have teamed up, first of all, to say that. This is hard. My list right now is middleweight, It's going to appeal to everyone. I need a lighter game in the list. And I am waffling between 3 games. Those games are Azul, Quacks of Quedlinburg, and Clank. All 3 really fan favorites. I would say that we love Azul more than most people do. There's a lot of love for Azul, but it's not as fervent. It's not as fervent as the love for Quacks of Quedlinburg and Clank. So I'm going to use my patented Kellen system here real quick to take a little look-see at how many ratings there are for Clank. There are 29,000. Let's take a look. Quacks of Quedlinburg. This is going to be it. There are 25,000. As expected, my final pick, Clank, a deck-building adventure. Clank is a perfect game to round out my top 5 games for this list. Clank is a push-your-luck game where you are deck building. So it's great to get deck building, to get push your luck, to get something that is more family weight. This one, the deck building is not as strong in it as sort of the adventure of it. You are just sort of picking the best card that is available to you, kind of thinking about your deck synergy and sort of determining when you will go back. That is the big crux of the game. You know, you can get that in a game like Deep Sea Adventure. It is very funny when someone turns back way sooner than you want them to, and you are deep, deep within the caverns of Clank, a deck-building adventure, the 70th ranked board game on BoardGameGeek, and my 5th pick for the final pick to round out the proverbial bow on this collection.
Okay, so that leaves me with the last pick of this draft. I will say that the games I had on my list going in on my draft board here were Race for the Galaxy, Kalis, and Barrage. I figure Race for the Galaxy, I've got sort of taken care of with the older games, and Kalis for that matter, with El Grande, sort of feels like the classic game, so I feel like I have that niche. I'm very, very tempted to go with Barrage, not only for the quality of the game, which I really, really like, but also for the branding purpose of having Barrage in our list. But sometimes I feel like you just have to take the pick that you know is going to hurt someone else. And I think Uwe Rosenberg needs some representation on this list. So I'm going with A Feast for Odin to round off the list. This game is the favorite game of somebody you may have heard of, a guy named Neelan from the Board Game Barrage. He calls it the best game of all time. So for me to get it as the 15th pick of this draft, the best game of all time, according to, it could be Nyland, it could be Neelan, I'm not really sure, but it feels like a lot of value for me. And speaking of value, you get a ton in A Feast for Odin. It is Uwe Rosenberg's magnum opus. It's got polyominoes, it's got resource conversion, it's got 7,000 worker placement spots. I mean, if you like it, it's in this box. And there's a ton of stuff. Again, some people call this the greatest game of all time, and I'm getting it with the last pick of this draft. I'm going to close it out with A Feast for Odin.
You idiot. It's Back to the Resistance this year. I will say that this actually hurts a little bit because I know that this should be on my 5. I know it. It obviously should be on my 5, but I couldn't find the right point to clinch it there.
All right, so speaking of our 5s, let's go around the room and give everybody the final top 5 list. Neelan, you start off?
Yeah, my 5 games are Brass Birmingham, Root, Codenames, Twilight Imperium 4th Edition, and Arkham Horror the card game.
And every expansion
that's ever made, yeah, and every future expansion.
A lot of value there.
My 5-game collection from the Board Game Geek Top 100 is Gloomhaven, Scythe, Concordia, Gaia Project, and Clank, a deck-building adventure.
And my 5 are Spirit Island, PAX Pamir 2nd Edition, Wingspan, El Grande, and A Feast for Odin. So again, you can go to BoardGameBarrage.com/draft and pick the one that you think is the best and have a chance to win a $50 gift card to an online board game realtor. So yeah, very exciting. And let us know, maybe at BoardGameBarrage.com/Discord in the podcast channel, maybe what your 5 games from the top 100 would be. And if you like this, we are interested in doing more of these lists, maybe going down the Board Game Geek rankings. So let us know. So that is going to do it for the draft, and that is going to do it for the episode. As always, you can find us on all forms of social media. You can vote for your favorite list, again, at BoardGameBarrage.com/draft, or talk about what your list would be at BoardGameBarrage.com/Discord. Our podcast channel over there is where we discuss the current week's episode. You can contribute to the Board Game Barrage wiki at BoardGameBarrage.com/wiki, where we compile everything to do with the show. We have updates on tournaments we're doing at Board Game Arena. We have a repository of all games we've ever talked about and all episodes we've ever done. So that's a nice place to go check out and maybe add a couple pages yourself. And finally, a big thank you, as always, to Heart Society for our intro and outro song, What's on Your Mind, Kid, from their album Wake the Queens. Until next week, see ya.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Yeah,
That's a good joke.
It is a good joke. Yeah.
You could play the Faith Hill song, waiting all night for Sunday night.
I'm going to play that instead.
My collection here is the number 1 ranked game of all time, Gloomhaven, Scythe, Concordia, Gaia
Salsa.
Project.
Salsa.
No. Just Concordia. Don't. Okay,
You're the one who brought up salsa.
Okay, this is my time to sum up.
Okay,
this is like at the end of the jury, this is jury management,
Sure,
the moment,
sure.
Mark, and you're like jumping in saying salsa with a weird accent.
Objection, Your Honor. I got it.
Yeah.